much. I suppose two key accounts that I manage would be they would be of celebrity status here in Ireland. You almost definitely don't know them in the US. One is an Olympic athlete, and the other is a chef. And combined, they have over 2 million followers. So I'm well familiar with a large scale account, but vast majority of people I work with have less than 500, and you know what, most of them are still absolutely killing it. So it certainly is a balance to be struck, but I'll get started here. So today we're going to be talking about Instagram, and what we're going to get started with is the insights and customer analysis, and it is probably one of the steps that a lot of people skip. So we're going to dive into that. So we're going to learn about how to find the insights into your customer, how to think about your account, benchmarking your account, and case examples to help you start thinking about success. So week one is very much about kind of, right, let's get the foundation right, and then the subsequent weeks to come are all going to be very tactical. Here are the tools of the trade, here are the tricks of the trade, here is how the algorithm is looking now, how it's set to look in the future, some accounts to follow to keep up to date with that side of things as well. Instagram themselves, his name escapes me right now, but the one of the lead people in there is regularly does Instagram lives, Instagram Q&As, all about the algorithm, all about what they're working on, and it's hugely insightful for this side of things. The main thing about benchmarking the account then today is I'm going to show you how to look at your insights. And if you don't have Instagram yet, that's fine. You can assume that your benchmark is zero. But for everyone else, if you've already started, what I love to do in this course is screen grab at the start, so that by week 4 you can reflect back on yourself and say, okay, well, how much did I actually improve on this? So it's an interesting insight, and I like to follow along with it. Running this course typically gives me inspiration to start upping my game as well. So it's a good place to get started. So to ruin Craig's intro, you're probably not going to be insta famous. Know your purpose before deciding on your metrics. So you really need to know what you want from Instagram. If you want to be famous from Instagram, or if you want your business to have tens of thousands of followers, it is somewhat unlikely, but that's okay, because actually it's so much better to have a smaller audience if they're well engaged with you. And the 10K mark seems to be kind of what I find to be the roundabout number that everyone wants to hit, and or for lots of different reasons. Some it's ego, my competition has it, and all of that, and that's okay. And then some people also have I want to hit 10K because I want the swipe up feature. I want these additional features that come into play when you hit the 10,000 followers. So there's ways around that too. So I'll be going through that in later weeks, but it is Instagram can be a full-time job to maintain a significantly large audience that is highly engaged. All accounts that I work on have a minimum of 2 people internally in those businesses working full-time on the account, making videos, content creation, stories. Everything is planned in advance in those instances. What you see, and I love to describe Instagram quite like an iceberg, what you see on the surface, there's often bulks of hours that have gone in underneath that to support that content, to support the copy, to support the hashtag research, to support all of that. And I'm not telling you this, I guess, to scare you, but what I am telling you it for is to be mindful of the balance between productivity and what you get from the platform, because you could be consumed with the amount of time you can put on the platform, but equally, if you're not getting enough back from it, it's that time money trade-off, because Instagram is a great organic channel, but if 2 hours of your time was better put into the paid ad side of things, then fair enough. But if you're very good at the creative, don't have budget, you're really starting to see growth, you're really using Instagram in an effective way, then you absolutely can really start looking at the organic side. Only a small number of accounts hit between that 10 and 500K. That statistic has probably changed slightly since I last researched it, but it's a small enough percentage of accounts overall. But at the same time, people hit that number all the time, and it's just certainly worth bearing in mind. My like own account, I work on a few, but once I started hitting the 600 or 700 mark, actually that was social proof enough for most people to really start engaging with me. So the smaller numbers really don't make a huge impact. That being said, there is a social proof element to the number, and none of us can deny it. But I wouldn't start in the mentality of aiming for it, I guess. Get the content right for the user, and you will naturally start gravitating towards that. So your new mantra, and the mantra for the course will be, I would rather have 100 people who are highly engaged with my business than 1,000 people who don't care. We're just going to be working to that ideology throughout the Instagram course. So before we get started, I'm just going to bust a few myths that we have around Instagram, especially in the B2B space. So Instagram isn't going to work for me. I'm B2B. That is both true and false. It is absolutely true to a degree, especially if you're in the B2B space who is after enterprise size companies or large companies, where typically the person who is managing the company account on the other side is largely a marketer, someone like me who probably doesn't care. They're just trying to get their job done and get the posts out. So the person behind it is worth thinking about. If you're in the B2B space and you're after startups or smaller businesses, you're far more likely to see the real person behind that business account if you're trying to engage with them. Now, you can also look at it from the perspective of like Twitter, where you may follow a company, but you may also follow the CEO. But Instagram tends to be just that little bit more personal, and it's very difficult to get that outreach to a high level, say CEO or someone like that on Instagram, because they're probably on private first of all, and if not, they're probably potentially using it for photos of their kids or photos of their life in general. So it's certainly worth thinking about it. The next one is the algorithm is never fair to businesses. This is true when you look at Facebook. So on Facebook, and Instagram is owned by Facebook. Well, on Facebook, the algorithm is not fair to businesses at all. But in contrast to that, it's actually quite fair on Instagram. There's no real demotion for being a business account in comparison to Facebook. If you post something in the feed, you're still likely to be seen so long as it is an engaging and quality piece of content. So typically in this instance, people are making the assumption that the algorithm isn't fair to them for being a business, but in actuality, more likely the scenario is that they've made a bad piece of content and it's not resonating. The next is you need to be posting multiple times a day to get value from Instagram. That's absolutely not true, but what I would say is that consistency is key. So if you are going to post, you need to be looking at saying to yourself, can I do Monday, Wednesdays and Fridays and Sundays, or just Mondays and Fridays? Or can I sustain a level of posting twice a day every day? Because the reality of it is you probably can't sustain that level of content creation. I've tried, and I really tried to dedicate myself to posting one piece of content a day in the feed and at least 2 in the stories, and I lasted 32 days before I cracked and didn't post again for maybe 2 months, because I was just like, no, this is just so tedious. And I wasn't getting the value back from it. That was the other side of it. So I was putting out a lot of content around digital marketing, how to, lots of that. And don't get me wrong, I was getting interaction from it. The people were reaching out to me to a degree, but actually I would say maybe 90% of the people who got in touch were students asking me questions as if I was Google. Things like, oh, where do I find my invoices and Facebook Ads Manager? And that's all fine, that's great, but I wasn't clearly, the message was resonating with someone, but it wasn't resonating with the right people that I was looking for at the time. So it was good to take that full step back at that point. The next thing is you need to pay to play. That is true if you want to get into the adverts. But if you're feeding the algorithm good content, it's not the same as Facebook. On Facebook, if you're a business page, you absolutely need to pay to play. There's no two ways around it. Just by virtue of being a business page, you are going to fall down the ranks there pretty quickly. And the other thing that a lot of people say is, well, the algorithm changes so often. Will that ruin any effort I've built up in the blink of an eye, and that isn't true either. But the algorithm does change, but I guess your business just has to change with it to maximize on it. It won't ruin what you've done previously, but it will impact you moving forward if you're reluctant to make change in the business to cater for that. The biggest example of that at the moment is the Reels changes. Yet another feature stolen from another platform. Reels are heavily favored in the algorithm at the moment. A good rule of thumb is whatever is the newest feature has the best chances of getting the furthest reach. But equally, if Reels don't suit your business, you're making bad Reels, you're not familiar with Reels, you're not clicking with them, you're better off doing a very high quality image. So if you're better at one type of content than another, you don't need to feed the algorithm. That's where the mistakes start happening then. And that's where it's like, oh, the algorithm changed. And then I started using a tool to make my image a 15-second video for Reels. And it's like, well, nothing aligned there. It didn't work. And that wasn't the algorithm's fault. It was the user's fault in that instance. So you really need to think about Instagram from looking at it from the perspective of, will it help you achieve your goals? So what are the proxy metrics for your business? So the example, and Craig knows well, I've stolen this one from him. Netflix knows that if a user watches 19 hours a month, subscribers don't really churn. But for you, this might be something else. Is it a number of events attended? Is it outreach from a team? Is it usage of a product or service? A very basic example of this would be, say, your local cafe down the road. If you went there and you ate a sandwich and you didn't like it, you wouldn't go back. And that is the metric for them, really, is how many people actually enjoy our food and are going to come back again and again. They elevate this content essentially on Instagram. So Netflix have a great Instagram account. They use funny meme content that further engages people in the shows they're watching. And while providing that share peer-to-peer factor. So they put up funny things about different shows that are going, and that reflects back and enhances what their core metrics are there. So you need to be thinking about, what is the problem people have before they become a customer, what gets them over the line, what stops them. All of these things you can start integrating very subtly into your campaigns and into your posts on Instagram. You want to ensure that Instagram or any other platform that effort is applied in, always that it falls back on some of your metrics in some way, shape or form. Otherwise, it's not having much of a benefit for you, other than the fact that you're on it, you're on one of the platforms, and that sometimes is enough for people too. But it's more productive and relevant to reflect back on what you're able to really get from it and measure. So the next thing you want to do really is think about, are your customers even on Instagram? So you can find hashtags in your space. You can just do a quick search using the Explore feature, and you can see, if you're B2C, you can check what type of content is being posted by both customers and businesses in the space. And if you're B2B, be aware that business accounts for bigger companies are not managed typically by who you want to get in front of, but you can still use these hashtags to find out what content style they're posting. So this is an equal parts research as it is inspiration to a degree. So you can see here, I've searched for digital marketing. The first one has 16.3 million posts. When I click on that, it's heavily saturated with spam. So it's very difficult to make an assessment from it. But what I did actually was I clicked on digital marketing strategy. It has a lower number of posts. It seems a little bit more relevant. You'll have to use an element of common sense to this too, to really kind of get the most out of it. But as you can see here, when I looked at digital marketing strategy, there's lots of helpful posts, content people are engaging with, stuck in that 9-to-5 cycle, the biggest problem with giving discounts. I'll definitely be looking at that one, because I am a big opposer of discount loops. But there's lots that you can learn from this. So you can learn, first of all, if your customers are there, are they posting? What are they posting? What are they engaging with? And what types of content are performing well? As you can see here on the right hand side as well, when you do a search like this, you get brought to this section automatically, which is the top posts. But you can also click on the most recent ones. But the top ones are great because you get a very good idea very quickly of what type of content performs best in that hashtag niche. So you can use this a lot to get you can get a lot out of this.
Hey Jen, I had a
Yeah.
question, and Rashi also had a similar one. So when we're seeing these posts right here, are these people or businesses? And then how do you know if you should be doing Instagram as a business or as a person? Sorry, it might be a really dumb question, but I'm actually not sure because I've got my own personal account, which pretty much nobody follows, and then we've got the nascent business accounts. How do you make that decision if you post as a person or as a company?
Yeah, so when you look at the content here, after you click on one of these, you can very quickly see if it's a company or not because it'll bring you to the relevant page. But I guess it's kind of almost like a personal question for everyone. And it's actually one I'm thinking about a lot at the moment because I don't have the time capacity to cater for different business accounts that would be kind of under my name. Um, and my personal account, everything is taken a hit when I can't cater for any of them. And would that be better in one account where I can just post on the go? So you have to look at your time commitment. The other thing is that are you looking to create a personal brand or are you looking to develop and grow your business brand? And that's a decision you need to make at this point to decide which is best because it's not about both are equally valid and valuable, but what you're trying to decipher is which do I have the most amount of time to develop and which needs to grow and maximize the most out of the platform. So I would think about it like that. So you got to ask yourself at that point as well, how do people, potential customers, use the platform? How can I engage with them effectively? Because engagement is hugely important on the platform. Instagram have well documented that accounts that like engage with other accounts are more real. It's factored into the algorithm as like a human element. Now I'm not talking about like thumbs up, thumbs up, thumbs up on all your comments. I don't mean spam engagement. I mean genuine, authentic human relationships on the platform. They value that significantly. Do you have time to talk to people regularly? What is your consistency going to look like? Do I have the resources to post consistently? And do I have the resources to engage with my community regularly? When it comes to how I plan this or how I think about this in my head is, first of all, at the start of the month, I'd be thinking about, okay, well, what kind of posts do I want to do this month? Because I find typically if I sit down to do this, I tend to get it done. I typically have to wait until I'm out of a procrastination mode and into somewhat of a creative mode to get this done because it's very difficult to sit down and say, okay, 2 o'clock on Wednesday, and that's when I'm going to get my absolute most out of my creativity because life doesn't really work like that. But and same with the engagement of your community. Are you going to have the resources or are you just going to set some time aside to engage with people who are relevant in the space? And we'll be going through in the later weeks how to identify those people and how to set up notifications so that you get notified when you need to look at it. So you've probably done this for your business before where you're looking at your customer, you're looking at the demographics, age, gender, locations, psychographics, feelings, behaviors, and pain points. These are all things that you probably know about your customer if you've already built a buyer persona in some way, shape, or form. So it's certainly worth just reflecting back on that if you've done it already. You need to be thinking about who your customer really is. Location makes a significant difference on Instagram. A core example of that here in Ireland is that we are a small English speaking nation who is perfect for beta tests. So we have, and Aoife will attest to this as well, I'm sure, but we have so many tests rolled out that I'm logged into about 10 different accounts on my phone at the moment. And if I went into each of them, all of them would be slightly different. We are just batch tested for everything. We don't see the likes anymore. Some people have reels, some people don't. Some people are seeing things in different places to check user functionality. So if you're like attracting people from different regions, it's worth checking if they're part of test batch, if they can see what you need them to do as well. So location is more important in this instance than usual, particularly in a European context or English speaking countries that are outside the US and Canada. So you always need to think about this when you're looking at your customer for your business. You have to really speak to people. The key thing, and this is kind of a general marketing rule, is that your marketing shouldn't speak to everyone. Your business can't be all things to all people. That's where it can get a little bit dangerous sometimes with the mismatch of personal and a business account. So your Instagram can't be everything to everyone. People always ask me if I niche, won't I miss out on customers? No, you're just going to talk to the right customers. What if your message doesn't land with your target people? That's back to the drawing board. That's kind of a separate issue. That's actually finding out something very valuable to your business, that you're not talking to them in an engaging and effective way, and you need to revisit your messaging strategy in that instance. My product or service is the best. It already says it on the label. I don't think I need to do all this. You absolutely need to reflect on your customers, because if you don't, you're already a step behind, and you are going to end up advertising on the platform and not marketing on the platform. And there is a difference between advertising and marketing. So when you are on your Instagram profile, just on the homepage, you'll see a button called Insights. And this is what it gives you. It gives you insight into your account. You can screenshot these at this point. That'll be the homework for this week, essentially, where you can go in, screenshot your accounts. You can see how many people were reached. You can see how many people went through to your website. These are some screen grabs back in December. You can see here that I had some dip off, I had some growth, and this is probably when I started that sporadic 32 days and it fell off again. You can see your age breakdown, gender breakdown. What's interesting here is that you can see the most active times. 7 p.m. tends to be the golden rule of thumb, and that's what everyone says. But what I actually tend to say to people is actually try to post it around 6 or 8 p.m. because 7 p.m. is so saturated, it's terrifying. If you go onto your Instagram at 7 p.m., you'll notice everyone is going live. Everyone is trying to eat up on that 7 p.m. golden hour. But you can get traction before and after in a more effective way. The reality of it is that, especially with COVID, is that people are on Instagram vast majority of the day, and they will probably, timing isn't hugely an issue. As you can see here, right through from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., there's actually not a huge amount of disparity between the times that people are on. And your post has a little bit more of a lifetime value in comparison to Twitter and to Facebook. You'd probably get a little more out of it if it's an effective piece of content that people are engaging with. You can also look at your past post interactions, which ones were performing best and all of that. So you can use this really as a good benchmarking spot for your business right now. Then you can also use these third-party tools to get insights. Both of these will allow you to get your first setup free, essentially. So you can have a little look into your insights and audit. These are also fantastic tools if anyone is at any point is thinking about using influencer marketing and you need to audit that account, because it is scarily easy not just to buy people know about buying followers, but you can buy comments, you can buy likes, you can buy all of the kind of engagement metrics that someone needs to tell you that they're doing well on the platform. And I've seen it time and time again. Plug them into one of these tools and I send them a lovely email back saying thanks but no thanks. And it is very easy to do with these. There was actually an account, Aoife, you might know this one, but there was an account a couple of years ago in Ireland that went viral from exposing influencers who had bought their followers, and they were using these tools. She was eventually caught out. It was all on the news. It was a big drama, but they used these tools to call people out, essentially. And these were big influencers that probably would have had maybe 100 or 200 or 300,000 followers that were real. They were just bumping themselves up to the 7 or 8, but it was still highly inauthentic and very difficult for businesses to gauge the accurate results that they were getting in terms of actually doing business with these people. So when you combine your product service with your ideal customer and nail your messaging, this is kind of what the perfect Instagram post is. It's the trifecta of your product, service, solution, and problem, and how they kind of come together. And I'm going to show you some key examples of this now as well. And also, followers and likes don't matter that much on your engagement, but they are and can potentially be an indicator that you're doing well. So if you are churning out content, you're doing all the things right, you're engaging with people, you're interacting, you're trying to grow the account, you're doing all the value-based work, then absolutely I'd be saying to you, start looking at your followers and likes, because those are a metric to show you that what you're doing is right. But when you start with the focus on just growing numbers, that's when you can typically people fall back the step on actual valuable content from there. So here are some examples of really good B2B accounts, and people don't expect B2B to be great, but here we go. So you can see here IBM. IBM are actually have a really good account. They have like these slideshows of understanding cloud computing. They show things happening in the business. They're actually hitting a lot of nails in the head. But as you can see here with these handful of posts about security and all of that, that they are actually providing people with value in the B2B space. And equally over here on Later Media, they're B2B as well. They're providing a lot of valuable posts there too. The power of nano, how to protect your Instagram account, free training Instagram course. That's a little bit salesy, but potentially that post is actually about it. And they're using some user generated content too, in the sense that people can send them content and they feature it, and they kind of integrate their community up into it as well. So there's lots that you can think about when it comes to B2B. When it comes to B2C, obviously the platform is more suited. I don't want to say more suited, but it lends itself easier to the B2C market. And typically that's the case across the board with the exception of LinkedIn. But you can see here Chewy on the left. This is dog and cat products, and they like really love the user generated content. People send them stuff back. Q&As about looking after your dog, and people who love their pets. Like if you have a pet, this is the kind of account that you'll instantly fall in love with. Vans, the same, lots of user generated content, really real community building. But also you can see across these that the aesthetic is strong there too. And same over here on the right where I was showing you that example from Netflix earlier. You can see here the meme content. They bring in people from the teams. Now, obviously Netflix is a huge, and they have a huge bank of content. But what's interesting is that they're not actually, there may be a few trailers, but actually they're riffing off it more so than anything else, which is fun to look at and be inspired from. So the main thing that you can get started with is get started with an epic profile, really. A killer bio, explain a bit about you, what your brand and what you do. How can you appeal to your target audience with that? Are you using your brand tone and voice to help you communicate? And your bio is your little piece of text next to your profile image, where when people land, this is their first kind of introduction to you as a business. You can include a link there, and this is interestingly when you post on Instagram, you cannot use a link in the caption section. You have to always say, that's why you always see the link is in the bio. You need to reference back the bio always. My link is up there. So you can use a service like Linktree, and that will allow you to use multiple links in your bio. So that's worth looking at. You can drive traffic then to lots of different places. You also really want to be thinking about using a recognizable profile image, your logo mark, mascot, or personal image in the case of a personal brand. What I would say about this, and it seems to hold true, is to infrequently change that as much as possible, because it becomes an indicator for people. Actually, the text of a username and things like that are quite small on the platform, and that logo mark is actually more identifiable, or it's quicker to identify the profile that is posting in that instance. So certainly think about whatever you're using, make it recognizable and make it consistently there. With the exception, I mean, of course, at Christmas, feel free to put a Santa hat on your logo, or Valentine's Day, where somehow the O becomes a heart, and people do these things as well, and that's fine. I'm not saying stop doing any of that, but you can get a lot out of being consistent on the platform. Consistency is probably the most important element to being successful on the platform. So you really want to decide on your goals. Are you planning on using Instagram to showcase your products, services? Do you want to build your community, increase awareness of your brand, showcase your company and culture and values, advertise, increase brand loyalty, share company news and updates? And all of these are valid, with the exception of advertise to potential customers, because you don't really want to do that in the feed. People can switch off from an advert. We're all extremely good at being ad blind, and it's a real thing. If you scroll through the platform yourself, I mean, if I said to you, what's the last advert you saw on Instagram, you probably couldn't tell me, even though you see one every 4 posts. So it's very easy to become blind. Over here on the right are just some examples of content I've created in the past that has been successful, in the sense that it has gotten me some good B2B traction. And like that, it is all very heavily, not really showcasing my products or services. Well, it is to a degree, but I'm providing it in an educational format, so that people don't feel sold to, they feel helped, and they feel okay to reach out to me, as many students did. So you can take a look at that. So you can take a look here. Here's some other examples of accounts with their goals really being hit. So you can showcase your community. Over here on the left, Dribbble do that. They are a community where creatives share, grow, and get hired. So this is all about user-generated content. Now, user-generated content, if you are in the business position to really maximize on that, it can be hugely beneficial to your business, because there's 2 elements to it. One is that there's someone else creating the content who's willing to send it to you and willing to let you share it, and you haven't had to sit and create content. Secondly, user-generated content is significantly important for the element of social proof. Social proof that people are so willing to, it's almost a one-up on a testimonial in a strange way, because it's like, I'm not even going to tell you how good it is. I'm going to take time out of my day, pick up my phone, record a video and or an image, and send it back to you with a lovely caption about how amazing this actually is. I mean, that is a gold mine in terms of actually resonating content that is highly valuable. In the middle here, we can see someone in Vision, where they are a digital product design platform, and they're showcasing helpful resources along with some, what I'm going to describe as abstract art. But you can see here again that they are trying to organize things, they build developer designer relationships, questions they asked, resources. Again, this is really helpful content to people. And the last one over on the right is engaging in topical content. So you can see here Slack is currently obviously in the midst of the work from home, like that's happening across the globe with COVID, and they're showing how to keep writers socially distanced using MBA. The future of work is here. This is how to reinvent it. So they're being highly topical, but also resourceful in the instance. So that's probably another good gold mine in the sense of topical resources and combining them together. So they're really jumping on that bandwagon at the moment. And the interesting thing about that is, what I usually say to people is, with their newsfeed, is try to keep the newsfeed evergreen, and try focus your stories to be that topical content that's not going to be needed to be there forever, because your stories will disappear within 24 hours. But in this instance, actually, a lot of this content will become valuable for a lot of time to come. Does anyone have any questions at this point? I'm just going to...
No, I was just going to say, like, to our earlier conversation on like personal versus brand, I mean, these brand examples are amazing. Seeing how Netflix is doing it, and InVision and Slack, and they're all from the company. So whether they're targeted to B2C or B2B. So I think probably my takeaway here would be that if you're planning on growing the company, then you should have a company account. And if you're truly interested in just driving kind of personal growth, then have your personal account. But you're not seeing any of these companies. Maybe they've got people within the companies also sharing some stuff about the companies, but you really kind of have to own your brand in Instagram. That's probably my key takeaway so far on from that perspective.
Absolutely, yeah. And I guess there's also so much value in the niching of your business. Like, everyone here probably has a business that slots into a specific niche. So for example, we would slot into the niche of helping founders, and helping founders is still a bit broad in comparison to what we do, but we fall into that little net. and we could narrow that down further and further and further. But the content resonates then so strongly. I mean, if I was putting up great digital marketing content today, and then tomorrow a picture of the dog, and then the day after all of this, you know, you're might be saturating what people want to see, which is okay too. But there's certainly a balance to be struck there. If you're building your personal brand, though, there's an element of that being okay, because the goal is that to get as many people following you as possible who resonate with lots of elements of maybe your personality, businesses, brand, what you work on, and there's more of a almost intangible kind of creator element to it that comes to play. So you can certainly think about it different ways. The next thing I'm going to show you is thinking about the aesthetic. And I've chosen this example very specifically because it is essentially a chipper, is what we call them here. Is that right? In the US, I'm not sure. I don't know. Fries
Fast food
station.
restaurant, fries
Fast
restaurant.
food, perfect.
I like chipper though. Let's go chipper.
Chipper. So this is a chipper. I've already forgotten what the other one is. So this is where you can look at a brand and think, okay, this mightn't be what many would refer to as the sexiest or the best option on Instagram, but you can see here how they've actually done a lot with the platform. They've got their brand colors, they're resonating with people, they're showing people enjoying it. They're not really talking about any health benefits for with reason. But you can see here that they're doing quite well on the platform. I mean, 76,000 followers. I'm not even sure if Freddy's a well-known brand in the US, is it? Do you know of Freddy's? No. Then perfect. Even
I
better.
don't even know if it's here, but it's cool. I mean, it does kind of
I
put
think
you
so.
there. It actually
Yeah.
reminds me of In-N-Out Burger a little bit. You know, like I think that brand resonates a little bit, but it's really interesting to see their mix of content. They've got the kids, they've got the people enjoying the food. It's good.
Yeah. So you can see that even businesses that maybe you wouldn't think could really like do well on the platform do. I'm just closing this down so I can show you some examples here as well. So when you want to think about your aesthetic is important on Instagram, but it's not the be all and end all. So you can see here they've got a good aesthetic going, but where do you get started with an aesthetic? So if you've gone to a brand design agency or you've done your logo work and you have your brand guidelines, that's all well and good. If you are a newer business who maybe hasn't gotten to that step yet, there's kind of 4 key things that you need to make it look like you have done that work. I'd recommend doing the work and using a branding agency. But if you don't have the time or all of that, I'm going to show you some resources here that can be really beneficial. So the first one here is fonts.google.com, and it's fantastic. You can just type something, so you can just put in anything you want, and you can see it in all of the different fonts that are out there, and you can just go in and download them. So you can sort your font situation pretty quick. A consistent font is actually probably more important than people realize. When you look at Coca-Cola, you actually see the font. McDonald's, all of these brands have a font that has stuck with them over the span of time, and mixing and matching fonts can actually distract on the grid a little bit, which is, again, there's a lot of kind of creative brand work that goes into really powerful accounts. There's also this one, and I love this one. It's called Coolors, coolors.co. And you'll have a copy of this in the presentation afterwards anyway, but this will give you spectrums of colors or color codes, give you ideas for what kind of color scheme you want for your brand and how that works. And as you can see, as you hover over the colors, they will give you the hex codes. A hex code is essentially a key number that is an identifier for that color across any platform. So if I went off and used C77DFF on Photoshop, it would be this exact color. Same if I use it on Canva, same anywhere else. So this is a great resource in terms of finding different combinations, and you can also generate your own and play with your own in here as well. So it's a good way to look at your color scheme and ideas for that. Also, a lot of people use Canva and are going to end up using Canva for the platform. And as you can see here, um, you can upload your colors, your fonts, everything else that you need into a brand kit on Canva. So as you edit templates, you can just select what colors and what fonts are yours as you go. So you can always fix their templates to identify it directly with your brand. This is actually a mixture of about 3. So you only get to use one. But when you're in an agency situation, you end up with just knowing whose is whose. But like that, you can just upload the fonts in here that you've downloaded from fonts.google.com, and you can also put up your brand colors. And for privacy, I removed the logos for this session, but you can add copies of the logo in here as well, so that you get that out of it too. And then one of my favorite ones, and this is a paid subscription service for stock content, but it is my God, it is fantastic for everything. But what you can do here is look for Instagram templates if you're using Photoshop or anything like that. And I'll just zoom in a little here so you can see these. But you can customize these with your colors, obviously. But these will give you kind of grids of content that you can just template and use that look fantastic. Instagram puzzles are also a great thing that people are doing at the moment, where you have 9 posts, because you can play with the grid a little bit. So you can see here, I'll just zoom in on this instance over here, but you can see how they overlap each other and interact with each other, the different squares, like you can see here in the yellow. So it ends up piecing together nicely as you put it together. And there's lots of different options in here that you can use. Vast majority of these are built for Photoshop or other kind of more higher end editing tools, I suppose I would describe them as. A little bit more work involved, a little bit more intricacy, but it is certainly, if you have that skill set, it is certainly a fast and easy way to get on brand and get like a grid of posts ready quite quickly. So they're certainly worth looking at. So those are my main tips there on just think about the aesthetic, make it distinct, make the most of your captions, make the most of your fonts, make the most of making your account look good, because it resonates more typically. That being said, there's plenty of voices out there that would argue the opposite argument, and to be honest, there is an element of it being true as well. It's equally valid. You will always hear, like Gary Vaynerchuk is a good example of this, where he will always kind of scream and shout and say, Joe, it doesn't matter what it looks like, just start putting it out. And there is a degree of importance to that, because I would say if the aesthetic is what's holding you back from even getting started, then you need to just get started. Just start putting out and think about your aesthetic afterwards. Give it 6 weeks, find out what content is starting to work, and then start thinking about layering in the aesthetic afterwards, because it's not the be all and end all. It's just kind of what you would start aiming for over time as well. So there you have to strike that balance as well, because sometimes this is the part where people start going and then they just stop, and then they don't even start, and that's really can be detrimental to even any progress on the platform whatsoever. There's other really important things to think about when it comes to Instagram that appear kind of somewhat valid, but it happens all the time. So clickbait and follow groups, even if they're a group of your friends, inauthentic engagement is against the rules. So if you've been on the platform a while, you may have received a DM at some point saying, join our business group, and every time you post, all of us are going to jump on the bandwagon, like and comment. It's going to be fabulous. The algorithm will pick up on that over time, that there is a group and everyone's kind of a huddle almost. It's on LinkedIn, it happens as well. They're called pods in that platform, but it happens, and it's worth staying away from. Buying engagement does boost your posts, but not if it's bought. You need to stay away from it. So if you buy engagement, you'll get a day or two out of it. It's going to be lovely, and then you'll start seeing things going downhill. Some major mistakes I've seen in the world of buying content or buying followers and buying engagement is I've worked with people who have said, I've said to them, oh, do you know what I can do? I can create an audience on Facebook for your paid advertising based off your Facebook and Instagram followers. And they're like, fantastic, go do that. They forgot to tell me that 85% of them were bots, and I was just advertising to bots. So that as usually that's a good campaign. So you figure it out pretty quickly. But also, I've seen people buy 10, 20,000, and within a few weeks they're back down to near the same numbers, if not a little lower, because Instagram is constantly trying to keep up with the removal. Now it's almost like it's always chasing its tail, but it does start catching up to itself over time. So you end up in a loop of having to keep buying it, because otherwise people will be, how did you go from 2,000 to 10,000 overnight and then back down to 3? So you need to, there is a worry to it as well, along with everything else wrong with it. But so don't buy followers, essentially. Spamming hashtags. This is kind of a touch and go thing that I find. So spamming hashtags and continued abusive normal usage of the platform are two things that there's discrepancy in the arguments around. There's one side of the argument where people believe that doing this and spamming hashtags and all of that will get you shadow banned. If you research into it a little bit deeper, it tends to be more like very high frequency posting. So if you're posting it like 5 or 6 times a week and it's on the 7 o'clock every evening and you're using very similar hashtags or you're overlapping sometimes, I mean, that's not going to ruin your life. But what is going to ruin your life is if you're posting on the hour every hour with the same set of hashtags, and it's a kind of, you're advertising essentially, and you're just hyping up the platform. And then continued abuse of the normal usage is just it's a rule of thumb across most of them. Most platforms, it's important to just play by the rules, because there's plenty of tools in Instagram's arsenal to put you 6 steps backwards. So you just really need to be thinking about that a lot. So the homework for this week is, first and foremost, organize your bio and profile. So think about your profile picture, your piece of text to go with it, and your link. Are you going to use a multiple link service? Do you just need the one? Think about the aesthetic if you're going to stick to a branding guide, but don't overanalyze it if you think that that's going to hinder you for now. Think about your audience and maybe try find 10 or so hashtags that are really relevant to your business. So just do some searching in your niche, in your area, find 10 hashtags that actually bring up results that aren't latent with spam, which the digital marketing one does, for example, in comparison to digital marketing strategy. Try to find some good hashtags that are really relevant to your business that will both kind of give you insight into how people are interacting with your business, but equally, on the other hand, are going to give you some element of inspiration, because I'm going to talk about that in the coming weeks as well. And then just screenshot your insights to benchmark where you're at now versus at the end of the course, because that's why we're all here. We want to see progress on the platform, and it's a good way to get started and think to ourselves, right, how is this going to change over the next four weeks based on what I put into the account? And you can take a good look at that then for yourself as well. So I'm going to wrap up there for Q&A for the last 10 minutes there. So if anyone wants to come off, or Craig, if you have questions there.
Amit had a question on, first of all, thank you, Jen. That was super great. Appreciate all the insights. I guess 2 things. What is coming up next week?
Yeah, I'll actually open it here.
And then Amit had asked, what gets better engagement? Is it posts or stories?
It depends which you're better at.
Okay, just like anything else, right? You gotta try them both.
I have, like, I work with someone who is so good at their stories, just like so good, so engaging. And then when they post it, kind of falls flat. So she's just better at like picking up the phone and talking to it. She just seems, it's just more instinctual or natural, and she gets a huge amount of DMs, a huge amount of engagement on stories. But then equally on the other side, I've seen accounts that have a disaster in the stories. They just cannot resonate with their audience there. So it's a little bit of trial and error with all of the different content types on Instagram. It is a mixture of things, trial and error, how good you are at actually creating content for that specific thing, whether it's reels, stories, or posts, images, videos, and then thirdly, how well that piece of content is resonating with the audience. So there's a lot to kind of take into consideration there when you're looking at that. And also, week 2 is going to be on content creation. So we're going to get started on looking at creating content that aligns with the audience. So that's why this piece of homework is important, in the sense of just looking at your hashtags, looking at what kind of content is already working, so that by next week you're kind of in gear and ready to go.
That's great. Does anybody in the audience have questions?
What is shadow banning?
So shadow banning is a term that I guess, as I mentioned there, is controversial. Some people swear by it and some people don't. But essentially what it means is that you've done something bad on the platform and Instagram has decided to punish you by pulling back on your reach for a period of time afterwards. So say, for example, if you spammed a hashtag, you're posting every hour on the hour, and then Instagram said, the algorithm picked it up as spam, essentially the next time you do it, the times afterwards, that it's going to restrict you from doing that. Now there's two sides to it. Instagram themselves say that they don't do that. They move straight from a process of identifying it to looking at options to either restrict or remove the account. But people assume that the word restrict there is kind of in balance with that shadow banning theory. So it's not confirmed by Instagram, but many people report it, I guess. So it's good to know that it's not confirmed or for sure. And sometimes there's just other reasons it's happened. If you're not spamming things, realistically, it's probably either just something changing in the algorithm or something not resonating in your content is a far more likely scenario for vast majority of people and businesses.
Makes sense. Awesome. Any other questions? Cool. Well, I know we're going to run some experiments with our own account. So this should be fun. And the content creation piece will be fun because it's hard to know like what to do. So I'm looking forward to that.
Brilliant. Looking forward to it.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. See ya.